Hi and welcome back to Reddit Whispers. How would you react if your wife might be pregnant with someone else's babies? Just a little context. My wife and I had gotten pregnant at the beginning of the year. We found out it was twins and we talked about what we would do. We decided to get an abortion. After the abortion, she told me she hated me and she felt I didn't want to have babies with her. It was a tough few months, and eventually I found out she had an emotional affair, and we ended things on her birthday, the day I found out. 1 month later, we're talking and trying to reconcile. She talks about how she felt I didn't care about the abortion, and how she was crying every night, but in reality it hurt me too. I wanted to keep the pregnancy, I just didn't think it was the right time, and I was trying to be strong and supportive. No crying. We eventually got back together and she's pregnant again. Things were definitely getting better and we were happy until we went to the doctors and they told her how far along she was, and twins. A few days later, I find out she actually had sex with the other guy right after we broke things off. She swears it can't be his because they only did it once and they used protection, but I don't know what to feel. Before we got back together, I told her I needed to know the exact truth and how far things went on after she moved out. She told me he was just there for her emotionally for the abortion, and they made out once. At first I was angry, disgusted, but now I just don't even know what to feel or what I'm supposed to do. The silence in the car on the way back from that first ultrasound was a living thing, a thick, suffocating presence that filled the space between us. It was a silence born of shock, of a joy so profound it was terrifying, and of the unspoken question that hung in the air like a guillotine. What now? Twins. Two tiny heartbeats flickering on a grainy screen, a secret whispered to us in the sterile quiet of the doctor's office. We had talked about kids, of course, in that vague, someday kind of way that couples do. We had a plan, a timeline, a carefully constructed future that didn't include the chaotic, beautiful mess of parenthood just yet. We were young, we were building our careers, we were saving for a house with a yard and a picket fence. The picket fence was her idea, a symbol of the perfect life she envisioned for us. And in that moment, staring at the black and white image of our unplanned future, the picket fence felt like a cage. We didn't talk about it that night or the next. We moved around each other like ghosts in our own home, the unspoken words a chasm between us. We'd catch each other's eye and quickly look away, the weight of the decision we had to make pressing down on us. I wanted them. God, I wanted them. I could already see them, two little boys with my eyes and her smile, or maybe two little girls who would have the world wrapped around their tiny fingers. But I was also terrified. I was terrified of not being ready, of not being enough, of failing them in a million different ways. So I said nothing. I waited for her to speak first, to tell me what she wanted, what she was thinking. I wanted to be the supportive husband, the one who put her needs first, the one who would stand by her no matter what. But in my silence, she heard something else. She heard indifference. She heard rejection. When she finally broke the silence, her voice was a fragile whisper. "We can't," she said, her eyes fixed on a point on the wall somewhere over my shoulder. "We're not ready." And I, in my misguided attempt to be the strong, supportive husband, agreed. I swallowed the lump in my throat, the ache in my chest, and said, "Whatever you want." The day of the abortion was the grayest day I've ever known. The world seemed to be holding its breath, the colors muted, the sounds muffled. We sat in the waiting room, not touching, not speaking. I wanted to reach for her hand, to pull her close and tell her that we could change our minds, that we could do this, that we would be okay. But the words were lodged in my throat, choked by the fear and the uncertainty. After it was over, she was different. The light in her eyes was gone, replaced by a dull, empty ache. She looked at me with a hatred that was so palpable it felt like a physical blow. "I hate you," she said, her voice a raw, broken thing. "I hate you for making me do this." I tried to explain, to tell her that I had wanted them, that I was just scared, that I thought I was doing what was best for us. But my words were empty, hollow. They couldn't bridge the chasm that had opened up between us. The next few months were a blur of pain and anger. We were living in the same house, sleeping in the same bed, but we were miles apart. Every conversation was a minefield, every touch a reminder of what we had lost. She would cry herself to sleep every night, her sobs a constant, heartbreaking soundtrack to my own silent grief. I tried to be there for her, to comfort her, but she pushed me away. She said I didn't understand, that I couldn't possibly know what she was going through, and maybe she was right. I was grieving too, but my grief was a quiet, internal thing. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just felt this constant, dull ache in my chest, a hollowness that nothing could fill. I was trying to be strong for her, for us, but she saw it as indifference. She thought I didn't care. The emotional affair started slowly, innocently enough. It was a friend from work, someone she could talk to, someone who listened without judgment. He was there for her in a way that I couldn't be, or so she said. I found out on her birthday. I had planned a surprise party, a romantic dinner, a weekend getaway. I wanted to show her that I still loved her, that we could get through this, that we could find our way back to each other. I found the texts on her phone while she was in the shower. Messages filled with a level of intimacy and emotional connection that we hadn't shared in months. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical affair ever could. The fight that followed was the end of us. The words we threw at each other were like daggers, each one aimed to inflict the maximum amount of pain. We said things that could never be unsaid, things that would forever be etched into the memory of our love. She moved out the next day. The silence in the house was deafening. It was a different kind of silence this time, not the heavy, suffocating silence of unspoken grief, but the empty, echoing silence of loss. I was alone, truly alone, for the first time in years. The days bled into weeks, the weeks into a month. I was a ghost in my own life, going through the motions but not really living. I missed her. I missed the sound of her laughter, the warmth of her hand in mine, the way she would look at me when she thought I wasn't looking. I missed the life we had built together, the future we had planned. I reached out to her, a desperate last-ditch effort to salvage what was left of our love. To my surprise, she agreed to meet. We talked for hours, the words pouring out of us, a torrent of pain and regret. She told me how much the abortion had hurt her, how alone she had felt, how she had turned to him because she needed someone to understand. I told her how much I had wanted the babies, how I had been trying to be strong for her, how I had been grieving in my own way. We cried together for the first time since it had all happened. It was a raw, honest conversation, the kind we should have had months ago. It was the first step on the long, difficult road to reconciliation. We started dating again, slowly, cautiously. We were like two strangers getting to know each other for the first time. We were learning to trust each other again, to be vulnerable with each other again. It wasn't easy. There were days when the anger and the resentment would bubble up to the surface, days when it felt like we would never be able to move past the pain. But we kept trying. We were both committed to making it work, to rebuilding what we had lost. And then she got pregnant again. This time there was no hesitation, no fear. We were both overjoyed. It felt like a second chance, a gift from the universe, a symbol of our new beginning. Things were good, really good. We were happy. We were in love. We were excited about our future. We went to the first ultrasound together, holding hands, our hearts filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The doctor's words were a shock, a jolt of electricity that ran through me. "It's twins," she said, a smile on her face. Twins. The word hung in the air, a ghost of the past, a reminder of what we had lost. But this time it was different. This time we were ready, or so I thought. A few days later the truth came out. She confessed that she had slept with the other guy, the one from the emotional affair. It had happened right after we broke up, a one-night stand, a moment of weakness and despair. She swore it couldn't be his. They had used protection, she said. It was just once. But the seed of doubt had been planted. The timeline was a tangled mess of dates and possibilities. The doctor had said she was a certain number of weeks along, and when I counted back, it was right around the time of our breakup, right around the time she had slept with him. The anger was a white-hot rage that consumed me. I felt disgusted, betrayed, foolish. I had taken her back, I had forgiven her, I had opened my heart to her again, and she had lied to me. Before we got back together, I had asked her for the whole truth. I had told her that I needed to know everything that had happened when she was gone. She had told me it was just an emotional affair that they had only made out once. She had looked me in the eyes and lied. Now I don't know what to feel. The anger is still there, a simmering pot of resentment that threatens to boil over. But there's something else too, a numbness, a sense of detachment. I feel like I'm watching a movie of my own life, a tragic, twisted drama that I have no control over. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to feel? Do I stay? Do I leave? Do I demand a paternity test? Do I raise these babies knowing that they might not be mine? The questions are a constant, tormenting presence in my mind. They keep me up at night, they haunt my dreams, they follow me throughout the day. I look at her, at the woman I love, the woman who is carrying my children maybe, and I see a stranger. I see a woman who is capable of a level of deceit that I never thought possible. And I don't know if I can ever trust her again. I don't know if I can ever look at her without seeing him, without wondering if the babies she is carrying are a constant, living reminder of her betrayal. I am standing at a crossroads and I don't know which way to turn. Every path seems to lead to more pain, more heartbreak. I am lost, and I don't know how to find my way back. The weight of this uncertainty is crushing me, and I don't know how much longer I can bear it. The days that followed her confession were a slow, agonizing crawl. Time seemed to stretch and warp, each second an eternity, each minute a fresh wave of pain. I would wake up in the morning with a sense of dread in the pit of my stomach, a feeling that something was terribly wrong. And then I would remember, and the anger and the hurt would come rushing back, a tidal wave of emotion that threatened to drown me. We were living in a state of suspended animation, going through the motions of our lives but not really living. We would have stilted, awkward conversations about everyday things, the weather, what to have for dinner, but the elephant in the room was always there, a silent, looming presence. We never talked about the baby, about the other man, about the lie. It was a forbidden topic, a wound that was too raw, too painful to touch. I wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, to force her to confront the mess she had made. But every time I opened my mouth, the words would die on my lips. What was the point? What could she possibly say that would make it better? An apology. She had already apologized, a string of empty, meaningless words that did nothing to soothe the ache in my heart. An explanation. What explanation could there be for such a profound betrayal? I started sleeping in the guest room. I couldn't bear to be in the same bed with her, to feel the warmth of her body next to mine, to smell the scent of her hair on the pillow. Every time I looked at her, I would see him, his hands on her, his lips on hers. The image was a poison that was slowly seeping into my soul, corrupting everything that had once been good and pure between us. I became obsessed with the timeline. I would spend hours going over the dates in my head, trying to make sense of it, trying to find some loophole, some shred of evidence that would prove that the babies were mine. But the math was always the same. The numbers didn't lie. There was a very real, very terrifying possibility that I was not the father. The thought was a constant, gnawing presence in the back of my mind. It was a voice that whispered to me in the dead of night, a voice that told me I was a fool, a cuckold, a man who was raising another man's children. I started to resent the babies. I know that sounds terrible, and I am ashamed to even admit it, but it's the truth. Every time I saw her hand resting on her growing belly, every time I heard her talking about the nursery, about names, about the future, a bitter, resentful anger would rise up in me. These were supposed to be our babies, our future, our joy. But now they were a symbol of her betrayal, a constant reminder of her lie. I knew that I couldn't go on like this. The anger and the resentment were eating me alive, turning me into a bitter, twisted version of myself. I needed to know the truth one way or the other. I needed to know if I was the father. I told her that I wanted a paternity test. The words were cold, clinical, devoid of any emotion. She didn't argue. She just nodded, her eyes filled with a sadness that was so profound it was almost unbearable to look at. The weeks leading up to the test were the longest of my life. I was living in a state of limbo, trapped between hope and despair. I would have moments of clarity, moments when I was sure that the babies were mine. that this was all just a terrible misunderstanding. But then the doubt would creep back in, a cold, insidious poison that would seep into my thoughts and color my world in shades of gray. The day we got the results, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely open the envelope. I took a deep breath and pulled out the piece of paper that held my future in its sterile, black and white letters. I read the words, and then I read them again and again, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. They were mine. The babies were mine. The relief was so overwhelming that I thought I was going to collapse. It was like a dam had burst inside of me, and all the anger and the hurt and the resentment came pouring out in a flood of tears. I cried for the first time since this whole nightmare had begun. I cried for the babies we had lost, for the love we had almost destroyed, for the second chance we had been given. I looked at her, and for the first time in months I didn't see the lie, I didn't see the other man. I just saw the woman I loved, the mother of my children, my wife. We held each other and cried, our tears mingling together, a salty river of pain and relief. It wasn't a magic wand. The paternity test didn't erase the hurt, it didn't magically rebuild the trust that had been shattered. But it was a start. It was a foundation upon which we could begin to rebuild our lives, our love, our family. The road ahead is long and uncertain. There will be days when the old wounds will ache, when the ghosts of the past will come back to haunt us. But for the first time in a long time, I have hope. I have hope that we can heal, that we can forgive, that we can find our way back to each other. I have hope that the love that we share is strong enough to weather any storm, to overcome any obstacle. And as I look at my wife, her belly round with our twin miracles, I know that I am willing to fight for that hope, to fight for her, to fight for us. I am willing to do whatever it takes to build a future for our family, a future filled with love and laughter and forgiveness, a future with a picket fence. The months that followed were a strange and delicate dance. We were trying to move forward, to leave the past behind us, but it was like walking on a tightrope, with the chasm of our shared pain gaping below. We were in therapy, both individually and as a couple. Our therapist was a kind, patient woman who helped us to navigate the treacherous terrain of our emotions. She taught us how to communicate with each other, how to listen without judgment, how to express our anger and our hurt in a way that was constructive, rather than destructive. It was hard work. There were sessions where we would just sit in silence, the weight of our unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. There were sessions where we would scream and cry, all the pain and the anger and the resentment pouring out of us. But slowly, painstakingly, we were making progress. We were learning to be a team again, to lean on each other, to trust each other. The pregnancy was a constant, tangible reminder of our second chance. We would go to the doctor's appointments together, holding hands as we watched our babies grow on the ultrasound screen. We would spend hours talking about names, about the nursery, about the kind of parents we wanted to be. We were building a new future, a future that was not defined by our past, but by the love that we shared for our unborn children. But the ghosts of the past were not so easily banished. There were days when I would look at her and the old anger would flare up, a hot, bitter taste in my mouth. I would see the other man in my mind's eye, and the image would be like a knife in my gut. I would pull away from her, my words would become cold and clipped, and the wall would go up between us again. She would try to reach for me to break through the wall, but I would push her away. I was afraid to be vulnerable, afraid to let her in, afraid that if I did, she would just hurt me again. I was trapped in a prison of my own making, a prison of anger and resentment and fear. One night, after a particularly bad day, I was sitting alone in the living room, staring into the darkness. She came and sat down beside me, her hand resting gently on my arm. "I know you're still angry," she said, her voice a soft whisper in the quiet of the night. "I know I hurt you, and I am so, so sorry. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me." I didn't say anything. I just sat there, the weight of my anger pressing down on me. "I love you," she said, her voice thick with unshed tears. "I love you more than anything in this world, and I love our babies. They are a part of you, and they are a part of me. They are a symbol of our love, of our second chance. Please don't let my mistake destroy that." Her words were like a key, unlocking the door to the prison I had built around my heart. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in a long time. I saw the pain in her eyes, the regret, the love. And in that moment I knew that I had a choice. I could hold on to my anger, I could let it consume me, I could let it destroy our family. Or I could let it go. I could choose to forgive her. I could choose to love her. I could choose to be a father to our children. I reached for her hand, my fingers intertwining with hers. I love you too, I said, my voice hoarse with emotion. And I forgive you. The words were a release, a letting go of all the pain and the anger that had been poisoning my soul. It wasn't a magical cure. The scars were still there and they would always be there. But they were no longer a raw, open wound. They were a reminder of how far we had come, of how much we had overcome. The birth of our twins was the most incredible, most terrifying, most beautiful day of my life. I held our son and our daughter in my arms, and I was overcome with a love that was so fierce, so protective, that it took my breath away. They were perfect. They were ours. And in that moment, all the pain, all the anger, all the hurt, it all just melted away. It was replaced by a sense of profound gratitude, a gratitude for this second chance, for this beautiful family that we had created. The road ahead is still uncertain. There will be challenges, there will be struggles, there will be days when it feels like we are walking on that tightrope again. But as I look at my wife, my partner, my best friend, and our two beautiful children, I know that we will be okay. We will be more than okay. We will be a family. A messy, complicated, imperfect, beautiful family. And that is all that matters. Thank you for listening this story. Please leave your thoughts in the comments. Click like and subscribe to the Reddit Whispers for more.